Part 97. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 961. Chapter 961. There are policies from above and countermeasures from below. Muju was silent for a moment, then raised his head and said seriously, "Okay, when you come back victorious, I will definitely give you the answer." After saying that, he left the study. In the courtyard of the Earl's mansion, Jiyan was lying at the window, holding his face with his white hands, looking up. But she was a little annoyed when she couldn't wait for Muju. She turned around and called Shuiling and said, "I'll write a letter. You go find Zhenyi and ask him to send it to the Marquis mansion and come back with a reply." Just as Shuiling was about to respond, she heard Muju respond outside the window, "No need, I'm back." After saying that, he appeared at the window, and just as he was about to jump in, he retracted his arm when he thought he was at home. "Brother Mu, where did you go? I'm anxious for you to help me ask." Jiyan turned her head hurriedly and almost hit the window frame, but luckily Muju raised her hand to block it. Jiyan's forehead rubbed against the back of his hand, and the instant warmth made her feel a little embarrassed. Muju took back his hand and said with a smile, "I just came back from the Marquis's mansion. The Marquis came to the palace because the Emperor is going to go on an expedition in advance, and the date of the expedition is set for 6 days. Jiyan stared at that moment and said, "How can this be done? Those people in the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Household Affairs are all useless people. They are always procrastinating on setting a date and cannot deliver supplies on time. Now that they suddenly set off for the expedition in advance, wouldn't they have more excuses? By then, the army will be out and the food and grass cannot keep up, wouldn't they be passive?" Muju thought so too, but he couldn't say that, otherwise Jiyan would be even more anxious. He advised, "The Marquis said that the army will bring more dry food. When they reach the north of the Yangtze River, they will also fight to support the war. The barbarians have food, but they will not be hungry." Jiyan still looks bad, but the general trend is that once the emperor has made up his mind, he cannot change it. She quickly said, "Brother Mu, go and have a rest. The kitchen has left a midnight snack for you. Eat before going to bed." After saying that, she closed the window, turned around and gave Shuiling a few words, then turned off the lights and entered the space. In the past few years, she has been moving around like a mouse, saving a lot of things here and there. Although we cannot bring them all to the Northern Expeditionary Army, we can at least help with 5 or 6 days of rations and give the Northern Expeditionary Army more room for relaxation. For example, handmade noodles are calculated as 2 kilograms per day for a soldier, and 10 kilograms per person is enough. 10 pounds of noodles can be easily carried by soldiers or horses. As long as you are in a hurry, you can simply set up an earthen stove, boil water in a large pot, and cook it, and you can eat it hot. Of course, it was really inconvenient. She also saved a lot of sesame seeds. They were baked relatively dry and not easy to spoil. They were also packed with vegetables and meat. Even if they were riding on horseback, they could take a few bites and drink some water to last half a day. In addition to these, there are also large quantities of wound medicine. Especially after Dr. John came up with a new drug, her pharmaceutical workshop never stopped. Coupled with the upgraded version of the magical medicine she brewed using space medicinal materials, she can always ensure that the army reduces a lot of unnecessary battle losses. There is no need to worry about the rest of the supplies, they can be sent along with the grain and grass later. Jiyan spent this night busy in the space, holding a small notebook and making various calculations. "I suddenly remembered that I was still short of antidote pills and anti-mosquito medicine bags, so I hurriedly took a look. As a result, I forgot the time in this busy work. Getting up early, the family had dinner, but when the good news didn't show up, they thought she was too lazy to get in bed, so she didn't pay attention. As a result, they ran errands when they needed to and went out when they needed to. In the end, only Wanner and Princess Abe were left at home with a few children. Wanner looked at the 3 poles in the sun and felt a little worried. When she was going to visit her sister-in-law, Beizhu, and the 3rd princess came to visit together. Now, I have to ask Jiyan to come out to entertain the guests. Shui Ling and Shui Yun were already wandering around the living room anxiously, but they didn't dare to knock on the door of the inner room. After all, the master has already given instructions. No one can disturb her until she comes out. Fortunately, the good news came out with a yawn after a while. Shui Ling and Shui Yun breathed a long sigh of relief and quickly stepped forward to serve them. Princess, have you not slept well? The dark circles under your eyes are so big. Do you want to make a bowl of soothing soup tonight? Shui Yun is careful and has already planned to replenish his master's health. The family has been a little busy recently. The master has been working hard and cooking a lot. Maybe he is tired. Jiyan waved his hands and asked, is there something going on at home? Why do you look so anxious? Shui Ling spoke quickly and immediately responded, the 3rd princess and Miss Beizhu are here, and you haven't come out, so we are all worried. Beizhu and the 3rd princess are here. Jiyan immediately guessed the thoughts of the 2 little sisters and couldn't help but laugh. They are probably not looking at me, but they are curious about my 4th sister-in-law and come to see the novelty. Having said that, she was not in a hurry and asked 2 people to find her a light and comfortable dress. She even had a bowl of seafood porridge before going to the front yard. In the flower hall of the main courtyard, Wanner and Abe were chatting with the 3rd princess and Beizhu. Although the 3rd princess and Beizhu often come in and out of the house, Wanner is not a stranger to them, but the status of the 3rd princess is too high, and Wanner is a bit restrained. She chatted with the 2 of them in common conversation, and said with a smile, did the princess and Miss Beizhu have an appointment? Why did they come here together? The 3rd princess responded, I was bored in the palace, and I didn't go back with good news, so I just went out for a walk unexpectedly. I met Beizhu at the corner of the street, so we came together. Beizhu also nodded. On his chubby face, his big eyes couldn't help but look at Queen Abe, as if the word curiosity was clearly written on his forehead. The 3rd princess was being arrogant. Perhaps she felt that Beizhu was a little embarrassed, so she kicked her quietly. Beizhu exclaimed and blushed a little when she saw everyone looking at her. Fortunately, at this time, good news came in. She changed into an aqua blue dress today, with large lilies embroidered with silver thread on the skirt. She had a lily hairpin in her hair, and with the smile between her eyebrows, her whole person was fresh, clean and smart. As soon as he entered the house, everyone's eyes lit up. Like a ray of sea breeze, blowing away all the sultry heat. Beizhu almost cheered and rushed over, hugged Jiyan's waist, and shouted, Sister Jiyan, why did you come out? I miss you. Jiyan knocked on her and said angrily, people who don't know, would think you haven't seen me in years. We even had snacks together a few days ago. Oh, I want to be with you every day. 1 day without seeing you is like 3 autumns apart. It doesn't matter how many orbs there are, the coquettish technique that I have practiced since I was a child is very easy to use. The 3rd princess also wanted good news. After living and eating together for so long, and suddenly separated, she felt that this Highland palace was completely empty, and she didn't like it anywhere. But at this moment, if she is asked to act coquettishly and cutely like Beizhu, she cannot do it. So, she glanced at Beizhu sideways and said, how appropriate to hug each other. Jiyan was very aware of her arrogant temper, so she took the orb and sat down, casually saying to the 3rd princess, you have been clamoring for jujube cake a long time ago. I had someone send you a plate yesterday, and you ate it. I didn't bake much this time, so I can only share these with you. Let's bake more when we get back to the palace. Remember, when you have free time, go to Uncle Wang's small kitchen to grab some more candied dates. As expected, the 3rd princess immediately smiled and said, don't worry, I promise to bring back a basket full of loot. At worst, I can just share a plate with my father. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 962. Chapter 962 Gifts and Salvation. Warner felt relieved as her sister-in-law coaxed the third princess to peace with just a few words. Because the three of them spoke too fast, Abe could only understand half of what they were saying, but she was still smart enough to realize how powerful her sister-in-law was. No wonder everyone in this family likes my sister-in-law. Who wouldn't like a girl with a delicate heart? After chatting a few words, the room became more lively. Bezu pulled Jiyan's sleeve and glanced at Abe with a smile. He understood the news and smiled and said, "Why did you come to see me so early in the morning? It turns out you are thinking about my fourth sister-in-law. Don't worry, my sister-in-law is your sister-in-law, there is nothing to be cautious about. My sister-in-law brought a lot of interesting things from the kingdom of the Golden Buddha, as well as their traditional clothes and jewelry. I will take you to open your eyes." "Okay, okay," the third princess and Bezu immediately clapped their hands. How can little girls not love beauty and novelty? This is what they come here for. Jiyan walked up to Abe and slowly explained to her clearly. Abe understood and agreed readily, and warmly invited them to go to her yard together. Warner had to deal with household matters and couldn't join in the fun, so she sent them to the door. Seeing Abe take the three little girls and disappear without a trace, she couldn't help but smile. She is really much more relaxed now that her sister is at home. Golden Buddha Kingdom can allow women to become kings, which shows that women's status is higher than that of Tianwu. At least the differences between men and women are not so strict, and women's temperaments are more enthusiastic and lively. When she arrived in her yard, Abe called the maid to take out her clothes, jewelry, and some small items she had brought. The rich exotic flavor instantly attracted the full attention of the three princesses and Baozu. The two chattered and asked questions non-stop. With Abe's enthusiastic encouragement, they even tried on a tube skirt and dressed up like a woman from the Golden Buddha Kingdom. For a time, the room was full of laughter, causing the little maids in the yard to look around with great curiosity. This is not outside. Abe doesn't have the pretense of being a queen. Like a big sister, she takes the three princesses to play with Bezu and Jiyan. Occasionally, if you don't understand the language, it will be more lively than just using your hands and feet. Until noon, Warner came over with a smile and asked them what they wanted to eat. The third princess and Bezu both clamored for hot pot. Abe remembered that her husband had mentioned it and kept nodding. It just so happened that the wind was nice and sunny today, so Warner set the dining table in the pavilion in the small garden. Abe cooked vegetables, shrimp paste, and fish in a light mushroom soup pot, while Baozu and the third princess ate the beef and mutton while inhaling and screaming for spicy food. By the time Bezu and the three princesses reluctantly left, the sun was already setting in the west. Abe prepared 2 boxes, filled with small ivory carvings, and presented them to the three princesses and orbs respectively. The 2 little girls were so happy that they wanted to get together more in the future. At dinner time, the elders in the family came back. Everyone also knew the news that the Northern Expedition Army was going to set off early. Li Lao rarely returned to the Ministry of Finance, just to keep an eye on the money and food, and to guard against someone deliberately delaying. Li Laosi sat directly in the Ministry of War and urged armors and weapons. As for Li Yong, he has already returned to the dock barracks and helped Zhang Cheng organize his troops. I have to say that it was a rare wise move to let the children of aristocratic families enlist in the army. Each family has children who are marching in the north, and this time many of them want to go with the army. No matter how many calculations each family makes, they still have to worry about their children. At least on this day, the Northern Expeditionary Army did not encounter any major problems. Everyone gathered together, ate dinner, summarized everything, and dispersed to have a rest when they knew what was going on. Good news has come into the space again, and the space is so busy. There was no words all night. When he got up early, Ai left Wen behind. Following the family celebration, he dressed up and went out to prepare for the audience. In the past few days, envoys from various countries have been staying in the post house and wandering around the new capital. They are also surprised by the prosperity of Tianwu. They all know that Tianwu almost destroyed the country, was driven to the south of the Yangtze River by the barbarians, and was barely surviving. At first I thought that even if Tianwu was not starving to death, the people would still be in poverty. But unexpectedly, the people were able to have enough food and clothing, and there were not even a few beggars on the street. Some people did not believe in evil and went out of the city to look around. The result was that in the villages, the faces of the people were good and there was no trace of embarrassment. Spring planting is busy everywhere, plowing cattle are everywhere, farmers are so busy that they have sweat on their brows, but they all have smiles on their faces. The envoy from Yingji country was more thoughtful and used some means to find out the whole story. After hearing this, he almost cursed. It turned out to be a missionary from France next door to them, who got seeds of high-yielding grain somewhere. Even if it was not sent to your own country, it was actually given to the Tianwu people. So that Tianwu retreated to the south of the Yangtze River, leaving only half of the country with such national strength. Otherwise, if Yingji could capture such a good continent. I have to say that this envoy from Yingji country also has bad intentions. It's a pity that he didn't know that the missionary from France was just a cover. The seeds of high-yielding grain are a gift and salvation given to this world by a little girl from a distant time and space. This day is the meeting of the imperial court. After the emperor went to court and all the civil and military officials paid their respects, the minister of Honglu Temple personally led the envoys from the 8 countries to visit him one after another. Perhaps because the kingdom of Golden Buddha is the closest and Queen Abe is half a member of the family, she was ranked last. The envoys in front presented special products from their own countries and expressed their friendly intentions. When it was Queen Abe's turn, everyone's curiosity was at its highest. Abe was dressed in a traditional golden dress and a golden gemstone crown, and walked into the hall side by side with Jiaxi. She was born with a high nose, deep eyes, wheat-colored skin, and a tall figure, which can be said to be extremely beautiful. However, the nobility all over his body made everyone subconsciously lower their gazes, without any intention of being presumptuous. Queen Abe greeted the emperor with the gift of a golden Buddha, then presented a gift list, and finally presented the gift as a junior of Tianwu. The emperor originally had some grudges in his heart, but when he saw that Abe was willing to let Jia 11 walk beside her, going in and out together, he did not hesitate at all. She was even willing to pay him the junior courtesy because she married Jiaxi and became the grandson-in-law of the Li family, which made her even more satisfied. After half an hour of polite greetings, the envoys from various countries were entertained to enjoy flowers in the imperial garden, and then a state banquet was held at noon. Singing, and dancing, changing cups and cups, of course there is some mutual testing behind them. Tianwu's officials, when they started to kill the enemy, many of them were timid, but when they were intriguing, it was the originator. The wine glasses were picked up frequently by them, and they were so praised that they made the envoys dizzy. Finally, maybe the envoys kept the color of their underwear, but unknowingly shared a lot of details about their country. For example, how big is the land, how much is the population, how many soldiers are there, and how strong the force is. After the envoys finally returned to the post house to sober up, these details were compiled together, and then combined with what Jia 11, Jian and others saw with their own eyes, they were all sent to the emperor's desk. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 963. Chapter 963 The Blessing of the Whole Broken Gold Beach. The Marquis and several important ministers were there, and they circulated it with the Emperor. The Emperor frowned slightly and asked, "My dear friends, what do you think? Is the country of Fan a threat to our Tianwu?" An important minister curled his lips in disdain and replied, "Your Majesty, in my opinion, Fangguo is just a barbarian who eats hair and drinks blood, so there is nothing to worry about." Another important minister was more to the point and concurred, "Yes, Your Majesty, I think the Fan people are not yet fully civilized. Although some small items are well made, they are nothing more than fancy skills. Moreover, most of the people are illiterate and don't know the words and teachings of sages. They believe in the Lao Shizi. They are really inferior to me, Tianwu. In the future, it will be enough to send more people to Quanzhou to monitor various countries." The Emperor nodded, but still asked the Marquis, "What do the Marquis think?" The Marquis looked calm and pointed at the half-man-tall clock in the corner of the room. This clock was a gift from the envoy. Because it told the time accurately and was easy to check, it was moved to the palace, and the Emperor and the eunuchs and maids liked it very much. The Marquis said, "Your Majesty, I think we should be more vigilant against Fan country. Firstly, the hibiscus ointment was introduced from Fan country, and it almost caused chaos in Tianwu. Secondly, judging from this clock, Fan country his iron smelting and forging skills are far ahead of our Tianwu. There is no guarantee that this skill will not be used in weapons. Even if Fangguo does not pose a great threat to Tianwu now, if it is left unchecked, it may one day become a serious problem. I suggest that we should provide more support to the Hailan army in the future, strengthen maritime protection, and set up a branch of the Foreign Affairs Department in Quanzhou City to carefully monitor the development of each country. If there are any clues, we can respond in time." Everyone followed his gaze and looked at the clock. The pendulum kept swinging, and a slight clicking sound came to their ears, like the sound of horse hooves urging. Even the two important ministers who were willing to oppose it suddenly felt nervous after listening to it for a while. Perhaps Fangguo is more powerful than they imagined and predicted. The busy spring days always pass by quickly, as if the fields have just been planted, and the spring breeze blows for a few days, and the tender green crop seedlings grow. Looking up close, I don't think it's that great, but looking from a distance, it's already full of green. The grass and trees all over the mountains and plains have grown luxuriantly, and from time to time small animals will run by happily, feeling happy to have survived the winter and excited for the beginning of the new year. This morning, not long after the city gate of Zindu opened, a group of carriages came out and headed straight for Broken Gold Beach. In the carriage sat Jiyan and Wan'er, along with Abe and her son, as well as many maids and women. There were veterans escorting the carriage in front and back, plus luggage, which was majestic and full of aura. Almost as soon as they turned off the small road, before they reached the second village gate, everyone knew that the host's family was back. So everyone dropped what they were doing and ran out to meet him. Of course, most of the people wanted to see what the fourth young lady of the main family looked like. You know, the village chief and the others went to see the envoy enter the city that day, and they spent 2 days talking when they came back. Everyone is curious about the long-nosed elephant and the long-necked giraffe, but they are even more curious about the queen's wife that the fourth young master has married. This is a woman becoming a king and ruling the country. Everyone has stretched their necks long ago and has been waiting for this moment. Abe had already received instructions from his sister-in-law and sister-in-law, but he was still startled by the welcoming attitude of the villagers who kept pouring in. Fortunately, everyone has a smile on their face, and the smile comes from the heart. She calmed down and followed her family members out of the car. Sure enough, everyone's eyes were on him, and it was extremely hot. Even though she is a queen, she has experienced a lot of this scene, and Abe still has to be cautious. Not for anything else, just because GXE said that people in the village are relatives who have gone through hardships with the Lee family. Today, as an ugly daughter-in-law, she has almost met hundreds of in-laws in one go. Jiyan stayed by sister-in-law Abe's side, smiling and chatting with everyone, asking how the business was going in the workshop, farming the fields, and so on. Finally, she smiled and said to everyone, "Okay, uncles, aunts, ladies, don't stare at my fourth sister-in-law. They are all family members, and my fourth sister-in-law will not go back to the Golden Buddha Kingdom tomorrow. We will have more free time to chat together in the future. Move around. You're scaring people away like this. Look, my fourth brother won't settle the score with you when he comes back." Everyone burst into laughter and responded one after another. "Don't worry, princess, we are just happy that our family has found a good wife again." "Yes, princess, this is the queen. Who in the world can marry the queen as a daughter-in-law? We are just proud of our family. If we look at her twice, we will be proud of her face if we tell her about her in the future. Will the fourth young master always stay in the Golden Buddha Kingdom from now on? Is there still a chance to come back?" Jiyan waved her hands and responded, "I know that everyone is also thinking about my fourth brother and fourth sister-in-law, so that's why you ask this question. They will live on both sides of the Golden Buddha and Quanzhou in the future, and the distance to the left and right is not too far. As for the rest of the matter, my grandma, mother, and uncle are all in Quanzhou. It's up to them to decide. I don't know and I don't dare to say anything. What if I made a mistake? When my grandma comes back, don't beat me with a broomstick in the streets." Everyone did not believe it and shouted, "The princess loves to joke, but the old lady is reluctant to beat you." Yes, the fourth young master and the fifth young master often got bumps on broomsticks when they were young. They were often chased around by the old lady. At this time, the village chief finally arrived. When he heard this, he laughed and cursed. "You still bring it out to tell the truth about the old sesame and the rotten millet. The fourth young master and the fifth young master are now officials, and there is also the fourth young madam here. You can save some face for the young masters." After saying that, he called to Jiyan and others, "Let's go home slowly, just in time to take a look at the melon vines planted in our village this year. I'm guessing that if you come back in the next few days, the hot spring valley has been sorted out and is always empty, so you can go there and play at any time. We in Sujintan are living a good life now, and we are not short of the income we have made in the past few days. My family is happy more than anything else." As he spoke, everyone walked towards the village. The villagers saluted one after another, smiled and went back to their own business. Abe couldn't hear what everyone said, but when he saw how quickly everyone came and how neatly they left, they completely obeyed the orders without making any noise, he couldn't help but nod his head. Looking at the fields by the roadside, melon vines are already crawling all over the ground, and the leaves are bigger than a palm. Even if there are a few places where melon vines are not planted, they are still neatly tended, not a single weed is left untouched, and the furrows are all straight, which shows that they are taken care of very carefully. Jiyan accompanies the village chief as he walks ahead. The complimentary old man beams with smiles and makes an appointment to have dinner at the old house in the evening. In the evening, all the young and old men at home will also come back, so it will definitely be more lively. The village chief went up the mountain contentedly, holding his hands behind his back. This section of the orchard was busy, and he kept an eye on it almost all the time. Compared to when he first moved here, the old village chief's hair is white and his hands and feet are not as sharp, but he is still full of energy. This is the blessing of the entire Broken Gold Beach. Jiyan was thinking about the medicine fields and pharmaceutical workshops, so she said goodbye to her sisters-in-law at the door of her house and left. She first went to deliver a box of snacks and a roasted chicken to divine Dr. Zhang. After making sure that the old man was not tossing herself like a beggar because of thinking about new medicines, she went about her business with peace of mind. With this busy schedule, It's time for the sun to set in the west. In the pharmaceutical workshop, the orange-red sunset light shone in from outside the door, and was mostly blocked by a figure. Jian couldn't help but look up and laughed happily. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 964. Chapter 964 Things You Don't Know. Father, Jian hurried over to greet him, shouting, "Why did you come back so early today? Didn't you go to the military camp?" The Marquis stepped aside and took off the orange-red glow all over his body. All the hard lines on his face softened and he said with a smile, "I will go on an expedition the day after tomorrow. No matter what, I have to come back and take a look today." Jian's heart skipped a beat, and she suppressed the sudden anxiety in her heart and responded, "Okay, I'll cook some good dishes for my adoptive father to eat later, and the village chief and grandpa are also coming to drink." The Marquis nodded and walked around the pharmaceutical workshop. The girls and boys who were working were very excited, and everyone came forward to salute. They are children from Sujintan, and they are very aware of the Marquis's military exploits. It can be said that every battle that the Marquis fights is a bedtime story for them. The Marquis is the person they admire the most. The Marquis smiled gently and encouraged him a few words. After the good news was finished, they went back to the village together. Muju was waiting outside, leaning on the doorpost, holding a straw stick in his mouth, squinting his eyes to enjoy the sunset. When the Marquis saw him, he said, "Go home first. Fu Niu has me here." Muju raised his eyebrows, glanced at Jian, and turned away with some reluctance. Mr. Ho smiled clearly and walked slowly on the path with Jian. The grass on both sides of the path is lush and exudes a faint fragrance. Birds anxious to return home fluttered their wings and occasionally called out to friends. Everything is being prepared for the coming night. The Marquis didn't hear his daughter's words for a while, so he patted her on the shoulder and asked, "What's the matter? Are you worried about your adoptive father going to war?" Jian nodded, her eyes filled with worry. She pulled a branch and shook it in her hand. She tried to persuade him a few words, but she knew it would be useless, so she changed her words. "Father, do you still remember the first time you came to my house?" "Of course," the Marquis smiled, with a nostalgic look on his face, sighed softly, and rarely opened up his chatterbox. "At that time, I actually had plans to die after all. My parents and family members died early, and the only cousin I cared about also became the emperor. I dragged my sick body around, planning to bury it wherever I died, but in the end, I ran into your family and this little girl like you. Your family is very poor, but lively and warm. You are more like a little fairy boy who fell from the sky. You are cute and full of aura in your eyes. You are loved by the whole family, which makes me very envious. I still think that if I am lucky enough to be born into a family like yours in the next life, it will be great. I didn't expect that you didn't give me this chance." The Marquis smiled widely, with rare joy in the corners of his eyes and brows. He gently rubbed his daughter's hair. "You came to me every day, put pills in your little fist, exchanged silver coins with me, and then saved my life. Of course I felt weird and surprised, but I was even more happy to have survived. So I made a vow. No matter where you come from, whether you are a fairy boy or an ordinary child, since you gave me half of my life, then all the glory and love in the rest of my life will be given to you. So, we have come all the way till now. I am extremely lucky that I came to your house and had a daughter like you." Hearing the good news, her heart felt warm and congested. She couldn't help but hold her adoptive father's big hand, feeling the calluses on it from years of holding knives. "Father, being your daughter is the happiest thing in my life. Others only have one father, but I have two. I am the happiest child in the world." "Silly girl," Mr. Ho shook his daughter's hand and wanted to let go, but he couldn't let go. "When my daughter is older, she can no longer be as close as she was when she was a child. but it was getting dark now and there was no one on the road, so there was no need to avoid suspicion. After all, no one can guarantee his safe return from this expedition. It is almost fate to go into battle and be wrapped in horse leather. He thought for a moment, then held his daughter's hand and continued walking forward. Fu Niuer, I'm sorry that my adoptive father made arrangements without consulting you. You should be able to tell that I put Muju by your side specially. He is the husband I am looking for you. I am kind to him, so I made an agreement with him. In return, I will let him stay by your side for 3 years, protect you with his life, and never leave. In this way, you can know more about him, and he will also observe you. If you both like each other, you can get married in the future. If you don't like each other, after 3 years, let him go free, and you can just be friends. Jiyan had some guesses as to why her adoptive father put Muju beside her, but she just thought that Muju had some mysterious abilities that could keep her safe. Who would have thought that it was actually raised by her husband? She stared in shock and then blushed a little. After all, she had never been in love with anyone in her past life. Father, is this too early? I'm only 14. The Marquis shook his head and said seriously, in some aristocratic families, in order to find a good home for their daughters, they have known each other since they were young, and their character, talents, knowledge and behavior must all be taken into consideration. Our family has a shallow foundation, and the families we often move around, including the 2 boys from the Lu family and the boys from the Guo family, are not good enough. In the past few years, I have also paid attention to the young people from various families in Zindu, but unfortunately none of them caught my eye. A big family is not suitable for you either. There are too many rules. Fortunately, I met Muju in Jiangbei, so I barely passed the exam. Muju was born in a scholarly family, but both his parents died and there were not many people in the family. This meant that he had no family to rely on and no one to restrain him. Without a family to rely on, he is alone, so he is easily attracted to the excitement of our family and is eager to blend in. There are no constraints from parents or family, which means that if you get married, you won't be wronged by anyone, and you can even live in Sujintan after you get married, without having to leave. Muju was a young man who suffered a serious blow in his family and was ruthless in his actions. However, he was also very smart, and his 3 years of study was better than that of others in 10 years, but he was kind-hearted and disdained the restraints of the world. He hated the rules and ethics the most. In this way, he can protect you from now on and won't ask you to stay in the back house like an ordinary woman. He will accompany you to see the world and do the things you like. Even if you act a little different from ordinary people sometimes, he will accept it more easily than others. The Marquis said too much in one breath, and then said slowly, but these are all the adoptive father's considerations. You have to see for yourself whether he is good or not. If you think well, everything will be fine. If you think poorly, he won't be good no matter how good he is. My adoptive father hopes that you will be accompanied by someone who knows your heart and will live a happy life. Having heard the good news, tears fell from my eyes. In the past 2 years, her adoptive father has been on war, and she has grown up. There are too many things, so it is inevitable that she will become distant. Unexpectedly, her adoptive father loved her no less and actually planned so much for her behind the scenes. Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 965. Chapter 965. Is it too late to regret now? Father, I remember everything. I will be fine. My foster father must come back safely and personally send me off to get married. If I am wronged, I still need my foster father to support me. Jiyan hugged the Marquis's hand. Arm and quickly wiped away tears. No matter how reluctant or worried she is, she can't shed more tears. It's unlucky. She raised her smile again, as bright as the spring Sunday. Muju was sitting on a tree at the entrance of the village, his legs dangling. When he saw the father and daughter from a distance, he jumped down. He could tell almost at a glance that Ji-yin had shed tears, so he raised his eyebrows and glanced at the marquis, saying, "Princess, aren't you going to make some good dishes? Just now, Shui-yun was anxious to ask you for the menu." Ji-yin took a look at the sky and saw that it was indeed getting late. She quickly said something to her stepfather and ran back to the yard. The marquis raised his hand and patted Muju, and said with a smile, "There is no need to wait for me to come back from the expedition. Your answer is already written on your face." Muju was a little embarrassed, but still responsible, and responded directly, "Since the marquis knows the answer, I won't say anything. I will treat the princess well and make her like me. You can wait to come back to hear the good news bar." At this time, Mr. Li Lao Li Lao San, Li Lao Si and Mr. Wen all came back from the city. They vaguely heard the last half of the sentence, and Li Lao asked with a smile, "What good news? Say a few more words, and we will be happy to hear it." Li Lao San spent most of the time in the academy, and today he came back specially for the sake of the marquis and his younger brother. He was even more curious and asked, "I haven't been at home for just a few days. What happy events have happened?" Muju couldn't help but blush a little, and didn't know how to say it. The marquis said jokingly, "It's nothing, I'm just wondering where our Funiu will marry in the future and what kind of husband will she find." The Li brothers immediately stared, as if they had been robbed of their treasures. Li Laozi said angrily, "No, no, no. Our Funiu is still young, and it's too late to propose marriage at 20. Li Laosan also nodded quickly, "That's right, Funiu is still young and gets married too early, so she is easily bullied. Li Lao has been an official for several years and has some understanding of the rules and habits of wealthy people. He said, those families in the city would look for a husband for their daughter early, and then wait for a few more years, and then get married at 16 or 17. Funiu is still young. We can pay more attention to it on weekdays. Whoever has a good son can prepare it for Funiu." Muju was a little anxious when he heard this. Before his daughter-in-law could catch her, she actually had several love rivals. The marquis glanced at him, motioned him to be silent, and then asked, "What kind of husband do you want to find for Funiu?" Li Laozi, the biological father, was naturally the first to speak. He said without thinking, "Of course he is a brave man, at least he can beat me. Otherwise, if you marry Funiu, you won't be able to protect Funiu, so what do you want from him? Then Funiu might as well stay at home for the rest of her life, and I'll protect her." After saying that, he raised his thick arms. That look doesn't look like he expects his future son-in-law to be brave, he clearly wants to punch his future son-in-law to death. Muju blinked his eyes twice and his breathing became lighter. Li Laosan slapped his younger brother and said with a smile, "Your demands are too high. Counting all the people in Xinjiang, no one can slap you more than one slap. And they are all strong men. How can you choose a young man like this? You just want to keep Funiu at home for the rest of your life." Li Laozi was exposed by his brother, so he put down his hand with a dry smile, "Look slowly, you can always find it." Li Laosan couldn't help it, so he said, "I don't think the other party's family power, appearance, or talent are important. Just be nice to Funiu, listen to Funiu in everything, and make Funiu happy every day. Have a happy life." Everyone nodded, but no one saw Muju, who was standing behind, gaining some confidence and puffing up his chest again. Finally it was Li Lao's turn. He smiled and said, "I don't care where Funiu marries or who she marries, as long as she is happy. After all, the 7 boys in the family cannot be wronged no matter which family their sister marries to. The only requirement is that you cannot marry far away." Mr. Wen stood next to him and nodded with a smile, "Yes, this is indeed the most important thing." Li Laosi turned around to pick off the long knife on the horse and responded casually, "It's hard to say, but in the morning my daughter heard a harsh word from her husband's family. In the afternoon, my knife has not yet cut off my son-in-law's head, even if it is far away, Mary." Everyone was stunned for a moment, then started laughing. "Yes, yes, this distance is just right. Tell Fu Niu that you will find a husband this way in the future." Actually, no one in the whole family thought about finding an in-law for good news at this time, it was just a joke. After a while, everyone filed into the courtyard. The aroma of food is filling the yard, and children are running and playing. When they see their elders coming back, they all run up to them with their short legs to give them a hug. It's fun, warm, and lively. Only Muju stood outside the gate, touching his cold neck. Is it still too late to regret it now? After a while, the village chief, Uncle Zhao, several elderly people, and Lu Baiatu all arrived. Everyone gathered around a big table, and the wine jars were knocked away. The village chief, Uncle Zhao, and others are all veterans and are very aware of the dangers on the battlefield. Let alone the fact that Lord Marquis and Li Laosi are mortal bodies, even gods cannot guarantee that they will survive in the midst of an army rushing to kill them. But at this time, we cannot say bad words, what we want is morale. So everyone changed their big pottery bowls, filled them with strong wine, and clinked them together. Victorious and triumphant. The heavenly force is mighty. All worries and expectations were in the wine, and everyone drank it down. No one brought up the subject of conquest, and most of them talked about the lively and trivial things in the village, as well as the hard work and glory along the way for so many years. Others just ignored it. I don't know how many times I heard it, but Abe was the only one who was extremely interested. She asked her sister-in-law to translate, and she understood most of the words including gestures and guesses. Wenwen and Yuan were naughty and played inside and outside the house. They soon became sleepy and were sent back to their room to sleep. House and others drank until the middle of the night, and almost everyone left after being extremely drunk. Jiyan slept in the space and continued to work. At dawn, as soon as the Marquis and Li Laosi got up, hot rice porridge and meat buns were brought to them. After they were full, they walked out of the yard and saw a fully loaded carriage parked in front of the door. Jiyan is wearing a red cloak, and the snow-white fox fur collar makes her smile. Muju stood beside her, shielding her from the cool morning breeze. "Dad, adoptive father. In the car are the wound medicines prepared for the Northern Expeditionary Army. I have sorted them and marked them. You can take them back to the military camp together. If you don't understand anything, just ask Uncle Shan. He will pack them all by himself. The car is the clearest." Yashan has lived at home for several years. This time he really couldn't worry about the Marquis and asked to accompany him. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 966. Chapter 966 Fight to the Death. Jiyan naturally agreed. With Muju and Shui Ling Shuiyun beside her, Yeshan and his wife played little role. Now that Aunt May stays behind to guard the yard while Yeshan takes care of her adoptive father, she feels more at ease. The Marquis rubbed the top of Jiyan's hair and smiled happily. "I must have been busy for a long time. Thank you for your hard work. Don't worry, your father and I will return safely and triumphantly." Li Laosi also patted his daughter on the back and told him, "Have fun at home and do whatever makes you happy. If someone bullies you and you can't fight back, then write it down and wait until Dad comes back to avenge you." "I know, Dad." Jiyan opened her arms and hugged her dad hard. Li Laosi rarely blushed, patted his daughter, got on his horse, and set off. Ji Yan turned around and hugged the Marquis again. The Marquis smiled and squatted down to make it easier for his daughter to hug him. Ji Yan whispered a few words in the ear of the Marquis. The Marquis's eyes flashed and he nodded gently. Outside Zindu, as in previous years, a tall Dianzhong tower was built. On the day of the expedition, almost no one was in the streets, and all the people in the city and outside the city gathered in one place. Of the 100,000-strong Northern Expeditionary Army, 30,000 were sent to the grain and fodder first, and the 10,000-strong Logistics Battalion also set off. Only 60,000 elite cavalry were left, each wearing a helmet and carrying armor, holding a sword and gun in hand, standing under the general platform with his head held high. The sun shines on the tip of the gun and the blade of the knife, reflecting the cold light. The people of Tianwu were all extremely excited, clenching their fists and shouting loudly. The heavenly force is mighty, the northern expedition is triumphant. The envoys from the 8 countries gathered together and stood on the wall, watching all this from a distance, with a hint of fear in their eyes. Maybe Tianwu is not as good as their country in some places, but the land is vast, the products are rich, and the soldiers are so strong and brave now. It is definitely not something they can easily control in a short time. The emperor was wearing a bright yellow 9-dragon robe and a crown on his head. He stood on the general stage with inexplicable fanaticism in his eyes. The Marquis was dressed in golden battle armor and knelt down on one knee. The emperor personally took the helmet and put it on carefully for him. Xintinghao is sure to lead the army to victory this time and achieve success immediately. Manager Yi on the side shook his fly whisk and quickly passed on the message. Immediately, thousands of people followed and shouted. The villagers from several villages in Sujintan also rushed over, except for those who had to stay behind to take care of them. They shouted louder and louder, and even the circles under their eyes were faintly red. Victory begins with a clear start, and success is achieved. You must come back safely. Victorious as soon as possible. Some children waved their hands vigorously and shouted angrily to their relatives in the team, "Dad, come back early and teach me how to ride a horse." Hearing this, tens of thousands of soldiers felt their noses were sore, but their backs straightened even more. At the general stage, the emperor helped the Marquis with his own hands, and the two stood side by side. The emperor whispered, "Cousin, no matter success or failure, you must come back safely. There is no need to worry about this side of Zindu, I am with you in everything." The Marquis nodded and responded, "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will go all out on this trip to regain Jiangbei and return in triumph." Manager Yi urged from the side, "Your Majesty, Lord Marquis, the auspicious time has come." The emperor took a deep breath, rolled up his sleeves, took the drumstick, and beat the huge cowhide war drum vigorously to see off the soldiers on the expedition. Xintinghao knelt down and kowtowed again, then got off the general platform, jumped on his horse, and pointed the long sword in his hand to the north of the Yangtze River. "Recover Jiangbei and kill the Qiu barbarians. Let's go." 60,000 soldiers all mounted their horses and shouted in response, "Recover the north of the Yangtze River and kill the Qiu barbarians." For a time, the murderous spirit was fierce and the flags were fluttering. The horse's nose snorted and its hooves paved the ground until the knight pulled the reins and bolted. The army surges like a torrent, the sound of horse hooves sounds like spring thunder, crushing the dust and smoke, and rushes into the distance to fight to the death. Countless people cried and cheered loudly. Countless relatives are looking forward to it and praying for a safe return. Until the dust and smoke fell in the distance, the shadow of the Northern Expeditionary Army could no longer be seen. The emperor returned to the palace and took most of the people in the city with him, and the rest also dispersed one after another. In just an hour, even the general order platform began to be dismantled. On a hill not far away, Jiyan and Muju stood on a tree trunk and looked into the distance. Like a giant dragon, the Northern Expeditionary Army arrived at the dock little by little, got on the boat one after another, and crossed the river to the north. Ji-Yun's face was sullen, and the worry in her eyes almost flowed out. She does not want to embolden others' ambitions and destroy her own prestige, but this time her adoptive father and father go to war, she really has a bad feeling. However, the Northern Expeditionary Army had abundant food and grass, and the troops and horses were strong. She also helped prepare a lot of things. She did everything that could logically be done, and she really couldn't find anything that could go wrong. This inexplicable worry made her extremely anxious. If her family hadn't stopped her, and she didn't understand the art of war and tactics at all, it would have been a disservice to her. She really wanted to disguise herself as a man and go on an expedition together. Muju didn't see Ji-Yun's expression, but he yearned for it wholeheartedly and said with emotion, "I also want to go out with him and kill all the barbarians with my sword in hand." Ji-Yun frowned and responded, "Actually, Jiangnan is now enough to support all the people of Tianwu. Why do my adoptive father and my father still have to go to war? Do we have to recover Jiangbei? Even if we recover, no one may want to go back, right?" Muju stopped his wandering legs, turned his head and glanced at Ji-Yun, and said nothing for a while. Just when good news was about to jump off the tree and go home, he suddenly spoke. "Princess, has the Marquis told you about my life experience?" Ji-Yun hesitated for a moment and nodded slightly. After a few words, "I only know that your parents and relatives have passed away." Muju leaned on the tree trunk and looked towards the north, with nostalgia and hatred in his eyes. "My family is in a county 300 miles north of Kyoto. Our ancestors have been studying for generations, and we are considered a scholarly family. My father is the eldest son because he didn't like officialdom. He resigned and returned home to teach me how to read every day. My mother is weak and sick, unable to take care of the house, but she is very caring to me. But I am naughty by nature and often get into trouble, causing chaos in the house, but my parents never punish me and only say that they hope I will hurry up. Grow up. My father also has 2 brothers, who are also married and have children, but they are not separated. There are more than 20 young and old, and servants in their 40s and 50s. They live in a big house and live a comfortable and prosperous life. But suddenly overnight, the barbarians broke through the border, killed at the door of the house. It happened that my mother was seriously ill at that time, and my father took people with the doctor to go into the mountains to collect medicine. My mother didn't want to burden the family, so she called my uncle to take me away first, and she stayed to wait for my father. I didn't want to, so I looked for a place at the last moment. I hid myself and the whole family looked for me everywhere, wasting the opportunity. So, when the barbarians broke down the door, I squatted on the beam and watched with my own eyes as they killed my uncle and cousins. They also tried to humiliate my aunt. She fought hard and was chopped to pieces until she died. Didn't close my eyes. My mother was also bullied when she was struggling. She saw me on the rafter. She was afraid that I would jump down, so she grabbed the barbarian's knife and wiped her own neck. When she was dying, she was still shouting for me to live. The whole bed was soaked with my mother's blood, and the blood of my family members filled the whole yard, bright red, like fire, and it burned me as if I had died countless times. Later, I took advantage of the chaos to escape from the city and wanted to find my father, but I saw my father, who was rushing back, had his head cut off by a barbarian knife, and the head fell in front of me. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 967. Chapter 967. Blood debt must be paid with blood. Muju took a breath. His tone was still calm, but his eyes were blood red as if they were infected by magma. In just one day, my family was ruined and I lost everything. I vowed to kill all the barbarians and pay with blood. I pretended to be a cowardly mute and was captured by the barbarians and taken to the camp to be a slave. I endured hunger, whipping and kicking every day just to find an opportunity to take revenge. But I had no power, let alone revenge. I'm going to risk my life. Fortunately, the Marquis led his troops to kill him from the south of the Yangtze River. I tried my best to find the Marquis, and then acted as an internal agent. After many life and death attempts, I finally cooperated with the Marquis and killed all the thousands of barbarians. I gave it to my parents, tribesmen, and the whole city. The folks took revenge. Ji Yin heard the choking in his voice, hesitated for a moment, raised her hand and patted his shoulder gently, and whispered, "It's over, everything is fine." Muju nodded and tried to hold up his chest, as if he didn't want his shoulders to be weighed down by the heavy past. Our family is just one of thousands of broken families. It can be said that everywhere in Jiangbei is stained with the blood of the people. I still have a chance to take revenge, but the hatred of the rest of the people can only be waited for by the Marquis and the Northern Expeditionary Army to clear up their hatred. The Marquis has seen too much misery, and carries the hatred of his family and country on his shoulders. He is burdened with too much now. This war has been planned for many years, and it is absolutely impossible to give up. Tianwu can let go of the land in Jiangbei, but he cannot let hundreds of thousands of innocent souls cry day and night without any comfort. Muju looked into the distance, where large ships had already crossed the river one after another, rushing towards the battlefield destined to be baptized with blood and fire, without hesitation. Ji Yin followed his gaze and felt extremely complicated in her heart. "I'm sorry, I haven't experienced this and can't empathize with it. I just don't want my relatives to take risks, I don't want them to get hurt and suffer, and I don't want to hear bad news about them one day." "I understand." Muju waved his hand and sighed. "Things are divided into public and private matters, and it is normal to get along with each other at a distance. Sometimes, I also think that if I betray the whole world, my parents can survive, and I will do it without hesitation. Unfortunately, I don't have this chance, I can only be a good person." After saying that, he jumped down from the tree, then stretched out his hand and carefully received the good news. The two of them changed their words in a tacit understanding. Muju said, "The left and right are also out. Do you want to go to the shop and have a look?" "Okay, Gilai is gone, and no one will take care of things for me anymore. I have to worry about it myself." Ji Yin wanted to find a good manager, but unfortunately there was no suitable one. Perhaps it's because Gilai did such a good job, and the others who came after him would naturally be eclipsed. They went down the mountain, found the carriage, joined Shui Ling and Shui Yun and entered the city. The first stop was of course Bianjian. Unexpectedly, I met Jiaran, Luzon, Jiasu, Brother Li, Brother Mao, Guo Wenhao, and the brothers Hyman and Jiajia here. They were all seated in a box, and everyone was in their prime, which made the rich ladies in the boxes next door send their maids to hang out in front of the door from time to time. Shui Ling and Shui Yun guarded the door, while Ji Yin and Muju entered the box. Everyone was happy to see the good news and greeted him one after another. "Sister, I thought you went back to Sujintan. Does your sister-in-law know that you are coming to the city?" Jiaran poured a cup of warm tea for his sister, thinking that his wife was worried because she couldn't find her sister-in-law. Ji Yin nodded quickly and responded, "I told my sister-in-law, she knows I won't go back at noon." Luzon pushed the plate of egg tarts in front of him across the table to Ji Yin and said, "This is a freshly baked egg tart. Shopkeeper Peng sent it to me personally. My sister is going to put it on my stomach." "Thank you, Brother Lu." Ji Yin took one casually and ate it while asking, "Aren't you busy today? Why are you all gathered here?" Jiasu shook his fan and responded, "In half a month we will be dispatched. At that time, we will have to go to other places if we have no choice. Today, we will take advantage of the large number of people to get together and talk. Then I want to congratulate my brothers. We will soon get what we want, and we will have a long journey ahead." Ji Yin held the egg in her mouth and bowed to everyone, with jade beads hanging on her head, making a clear sound. Her naughty look made everyone laugh. Jiaran patted his sister and took out a handkerchief to wipe off the egg crumbs on her body. Unexpectedly, Guo Wenhao also handed the handkerchief over to her, and they suddenly touched each other. Guo Wenhao quickly took it back, his ears slightly red. Jiyan didn't see it, so she asked casually, "Brother Wenhao, I heard from my brother that there are 2 thorn rose trees in your village that are blooming very well, and I want to ask you for one. Around my greenhouse the wooden walls are bare and I plan to decorate them." Guo Wenhao's eyes burst with surprise, and he quickly responded, "I don't understand flowers, and I just keep them for fun. If you like them, just dig them all away." "Okay, then I'm welcome. In a few days, I'll have someone build a grape shed for you, and give you dozens of grapevines. In autumn, you can eat grapes and read at the same time." The good news was generous in return, causing Jimin and Xiuji to immediately protest. Jimin shouted, "Sister, our yard in the town is also bare. Since we are giving away a grape shed, we cannot be left behind." Xiuji also smiled and responded, "Yes, yes, I like eating grapes the most. Sitting under the grape trellis, eating grapes and reading, I feel happy just thinking about it." Jiyan was naturally not stingy and agreed. Muju sat next to Brother Cat, chatted with him for a few words, took a piece of shakima and ate it slowly, not caring at all that everyone was ignoring him. On the contrary, he secretly saw everyone's expressions in his eyes, and the shakima in his mouth was no longer sweet. He only felt that the situation was extremely serious. At this time, shopkeeper Peng heard the news and brought some snacks and came over to talk. Jiyan simply asked about the business. After seeing that nothing happened, he wanted to go to the fruit and vegetable shop and the hot pot shop. As a result, before I could go out, a young had already come looking for me. It turned out that the emperor summoned Jiaran, Jiasu, and Luzon to enter the palace. Jiaran and others quickly packed up their clothes, tidied them up, and hurried into the palace. Brother Li couldn't help but chatter and said, "I don't know where the emperor wants to send my eldest brother and the others to be officials. He is summoned every now and then, which makes others extremely jealous. I don't know how many harsh words were said behind my back." Brother Cat shook the jade pendant he was playing with and smiled mischievously, "I think that the eldest brother and the eldest brother Jia are both accompanying guests, and Prince Lu is the one the emperor really wants to see." "How do you say this?" everyone was curious and asked one after another. Brother Cat said, "Last time, when the elder brother and the others entered the palace, I had nothing to do and took the car to pick them up. But when I saw the third princess and brother Lu walking side by side, the third princess turned red." "You mean, brother Lu is going to be the consort?" Xiuji shouted in surprise, but Hyman covered his mouth. "Don't yell, there are many people in the left and right boxes, be careful of the trouble coming from your mouth." Jiyan also felt that it was not good to discuss this matter behind his back, not to mention that the third princess was a woman, so if it was spread, it would always be easy to talk about but not popular. So, she quickly changed the subject, "Where are fourth brother and fifth brother, have they gone to the foreign affairs department again? I also want to discuss with them to prepare a flower viewing party in a few days and introduce fourth sister-in-law to everyone." Today's update is here. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 968. Chapter 968 Marriage Grant. "Oh, that's a good thing." Brother Cat nodded immediately and responded, "The fourth sister-in-law is the queen. I don't know how many people are curious and want to see her. Grandma and aunts are not here. You, the county, want to reward you. A flower banquet is most suitable. Besides, remember to send invitations to the academy. My eldest brother and sixth brother have finished their exams and are going to become officials, but your brother and I have to stay in the academy for 2 more years. I don't ask the college to pay much attention to me. At least don't trap me and let me do my homework all day long." Jiyan rolled her eyes, feeling helpless at her brother's laziness. "You don't plan to take the exam to get a merit degree?" The academy is a place for studying, but it is used as a temporary inn for you to stay. Brother Cat smiled flatteringly. Sister, don't say that, hee. I've been busy writing overseas travel notes recently. When I finish writing, I will definitely go back and study hard. When he said this, everyone just laughed and no one took it seriously. In the final analysis, the most blessed among the boys in the Lee family is Brother Cat. His brother has already been on the gold medal list smoothly, and the other cousins are also outstanding. When it is his turn, he does not have the responsibility or pressure to take on the glory of the family. He just needs to make himself happy and not cause trouble for the family. Everyone chatted for a few more words, briefly discussed the details of the flower viewing banquet, and then dispersed. Hyman and Chiajila were going to visit calligraphy and painting shops, and Brother Lee, Brother Mao and Guo Wenhao were all taken away by them to serve as consultants. Guo Wenhao originally wanted to say a few words to Jiyan, but in the end he was not given the opportunity at all. Muju also said quickly, Princess, go to the fruit and vegetable shop. There is a flower viewing party, and there are many things to do. I need to go back early to discuss with the young lady. Jiyan nodded, turned to the fruit and vegetable shop and the hot pot shop, took today's account book and went directly back to Sujintan. Warner and Abe took the children, as well as the little girls who were waiting at home, to the hot spring valley. In this season, many flowers in the valley are in bloom, and the light mist fills the air, making it look like a fairyland on earth and beautiful. There are no outsiders, and the orchard on the mountain is quiet. As long as they guard the entrance of the valley, all the old and young girls can have fun for most of the day. So, even when they returned home, they all still had smiles on their faces. Jiyan had just baked 2 stoves of snacks, made milk tea, and squeezed juice. When he saw everyone coming back, he asked Shuiling and Shui Yun to bring them up. Everyone couldn't help but cheer and feast. The children even hugged their aunt's legs and shouted as if their mouths were dipped in honey, Auntie is the best, and the snacks made by Auntie are the most delicious. Jiyan was coaxed to smile, hugged them and kissed them one by one. After Warner and Abe had filled their stomachs, they asked about things in the city. Jiyan briefly talked about it, and then mentioned the flower viewing banquet. Warner immediately agreed, and Abe didn't have any objections. So Jiyan asked Shui Ling to write and finalize most of the guest list. After nightfall, Mr. Li Lao and Mr. Wen rushed back with Jiaran and others. Li Lao-san returned to the college. Jie Huan was guarding the restaurant and several shops and did not come back. Li Lao heard that there was going to be a flower viewing party, so he added 2 wives who were friends with his colleagues to the list. Mr. Wen also has 2 more children, both of whom are close to Mrs. Wen. Because he had to return to the Earl's mansion for the flower viewing party, Abe was still a little reluctant to leave Broken Gold Beach. The Broken Gold Beach was not the best scenery she had ever seen in her life, but it was the place where she felt most at ease and warm. No wonder my husband always wants to come back here when he is at sea. The next morning, Li Lao and Mr. Wen hurried into the city again. The things they need to be busy with do not end just because the Northern Expeditionary Army sets off. Instead, they have to worry more than before. Because the army is outside, all the support and confidence are in the court. Any slight disturbance will have a great impact and harm to the Northern Expeditionary Army. Warner was busy writing invitations and shopping, while Jiyan helped her sister-in-law prepare ingredients and other items. Of course, the most important thing is flowers. After all, it is a flower viewing party. Even if everyone knows that flower viewing is a gimmick, they still need to make it more beautiful. Fortunately, some peach trees have been planted in the space and they will be in full bloom soon. Jiyan simply moved the peach tree out and planted it in the garden of the Earl's mansion. In this way, after the flower viewing feast, at the end of summer, the family also had peaches to eat. In the busy life, the days pass quickly. On this day, Kai-un suddenly came from the palace, and Ji Yin quickly stopped her to chat. What is the princess busy with in the palace? Why haven't you come to play with me recently? Did the third princess eat the snacks that were sent to the palace before? Kaiun was steady and responded thoughtfully, "Thank you, princess, for thinking about it." The princess ate the snacks sent by the princess before and liked it very much. She always talks about it on weekdays and thinks of the princess all the time. It's just that the princess has a happy event recently and is shy for a while, so she can't go out and walk around. Ji Yin was stunned for a moment and asked quickly, "Has the princess's marriage been decided?" Shui Ling and Shui Yun were also curious, and asked with a smile, "Sister Kaiun, please tell me, has the third princess really decided on the consort?" Kaiun smiled and nodded, "Yes, the imperial edict has been issued just now. The emperor has granted marriage to the third princess and Prince Lu." "Ah, it's really Prince Lu. Prince Lu is a good person, good-looking and kind-hearted." "Yes, this time we got the handsome man. He and the princess are so talented and beautiful, they are a perfect match." Shui Ling and Shui Yun praised her without any words. Both of them were happy for the third princess. Ji Yin was also happy and said with a smile, "Since the imperial edict has been issued, what else can the princess be shy about? I told her to come to my flower viewing party. I arranged for the little girl to tell stories. If she missed the fun, don't blame me for not telling her." She. Kaiun's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she quickly responded, "Okay, I will definitely tell the princess when I get back." The princess has long been thinking about the little girls taught by the princess, but she didn't expect that she would be willing to shout out and show up at this flower viewing banquet. Previously, Ji Yin once went to the relief department to take her second uncle home. Occasionally, she heard a few children quarreling. Two little girls were particularly sharp-tongued and looked funny and cute. She had a sudden idea, so she wrote some cross-talk jokes and asked the two little girls to practice. Unexpectedly, the two little girls were extremely talented and learned quickly. A month ago, the old lady of the Jiao family celebrated her birthday. Ji Yin sent two little girls to perform a performance, which made all the women laugh non-stop, and the scene was extremely lively. The two little girls received more than 20 taels in reward money, which was enough to feed and drink them for 5 or 6 years. In the relief department, children who are unwilling to study will also be taught some survival skills. For this reason, Ji Yin discussed with his second uncle and added this opportunity to make a fortune. There are little girls under 10 years old on the left and right, who go in and out of the back houses of various houses to tell stories to the women to relieve their boredom without causing any trouble. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 969. Chapter 969. It's conceivable but unspeakable. After 2 or 3 years, when they have earned enough money to survive and dowry, they can change their career, which will have no impact on their integrity, let alone delay their marriage. After more than a month of preparations, the little girl has admitted a dozen of them and has been practicing. She just lacks a capable female steward to take care of them. Ji Yin intends to ask the housekeeper of the home mansion to help find a nanny. After all, she has to go in and out of various back houses, and the housekeeper must know some rules. Kaiun talked for a while, then picked up 2 boxes of snacks and went back happily with the good news. As night falls, the Earl's mansion in Zindulu rarely becomes lively. These days, the eldest young lady and her children have been living in Sujintan, so the house is inevitably deserted. But today, not only the uncle and the third master are back, but also the young masters are also entertaining guests. The lanterns under the eaves of the corridor swayed in the evening breeze, illuminating the maids and young men coming and going, as well as the cooking in the kitchen. Li Lao went to write official documents after dinner. Li Lao-san had nothing to do, so he walked around the house. He went to the city to do some shopping today. After being delayed for a while, he came back to stay one night and return to the academy tomorrow morning. At this moment, seeing the lights in his nephew's study brightly lit, he was curious and asked the boy who brought tea. "What kind of guests are you hosting today, young master? It sounds lively." The young man quickly responded, "As for the third master, the eldest young master is having a wedding banquet with Mr. Jia and Mr. Lu. The emperor has decreed that the third princess and Mr. Lu will be married, and Mr. Lu will be the son-in-law." The Prince of Lu was so happy that he and Mr. Jia came to see the eldest young master for a drink. Li Lao-san frowned when he heard this. Thinking of the scene he had seen before, he felt uneasy. So he made an excuse and asked the servant to call Jiaran out. Jiaran was accompanying Jiasu and Luzong to talk. When he saw Luzong drank a bottle of wine and grabbed a second bottle, he was about to stop him. As a result, before he could speak, the boy knocked on the door and said, "Young master, the third master said that he wants to ask you for some elementary school books. It seems that there is a child from a farmer's family in the town who is very talented, but cannot go to school. The third master wants to help him." Bundle. Jiaran did not doubt that he had it, so he stood up quickly and said to Jiasu and Luzong, "You guys drink, I'll go and take a look. My third uncle rarely troubles the family. This is the first time he speaks. Maybe there is something difficult about it." After saying that, he went out the door. Li Lao-san was wandering outside the door, saw his nephew, pulled him to a secluded place, and asked, "Jiaran, Prince Lu was given a marriage today and will be the crown prince. This is a good thing. But why is he not here? Why did you come to our house to drink while you were celebrating?" Jiaran was stunned for a moment. He usually got along very well with Jiasu and Luzong, and they were almost as good as brothers of the opposite sex. Just now Luzong and Jiasu came over. When they talked about the marriage, he just ordered the food and wine to be prepared without thinking much about it. "Third uncle, do you think there's something inappropriate?" Jiaran asked tentatively. Li Lao-san hesitated for a moment, then motioned for him to come forward and whispered several words. Jiaran's brows furrowed even more as he heard this, and his eyes were full of disbelief. "Third uncle, this is impossible. If nothing else, the age difference is too big." Li Lao-san was doing his duty, and he felt guilty for gossiping behind his back like this. He rubbed his hands and whispered, "I'm afraid I've made a mistake, so I'm telling you to pay more attention. In short, get along with friends. No matter how good you are, you can't be closer than your sister. Don't worry, third uncle, I know about this." Jiaran endured his anxiety and comforted his third uncle, "Just go back and rest, I will take care of it." Li Lao-san nodded, patted his nephew on the shoulder and turned back. Jiaran stood in the night for a long time before returning to the study. Jiasu was half drunk and his face was red. When Jiaran came back, he said loudly, "I can't do it. This guy is so good at drinking. Find a room and let me squint for a while. You can drink with him." This was just what Jiaran wanted, so he immediately called Zhenyi and others to help Jiasu go to the guest room to sleep. For a while, only Luzong and Jiaran were left in the room. Jiaran raised his hand and gave Luzong a piece of sauced pork with chopsticks, and said as if casually chatting, "Don't just drink, come and eat some food. My sister spent a long time thinking about the recipe for the sauced pork. Yes, I dare say that it is the only delicious food in Tianwu." Luzong immediately put down his wine glass, ate the sauced pork, and praised in a low voice, "The princess is smart and ingenious. This sauced pork is indeed delicious." Jiaran's heart became sinking, but he still had a smile on his face, and no change could be seen. "Of course, my sister's intelligence is recognized by the emperor. Otherwise, he would not insist on calling my sister into the palace to serve as a companion to the third princess. The emperor just thinks that the third princess is too unruly and wants my sister to help control it. As he spoke, he poured a glass of wine for Luzon and joked, the third princess is much more dignified and steady than before, and now she has been given a marriage to you. So, you should be grateful to my sister. Luzon's heart skipped a beat, and with the last glimmer of hope, he slowly raised his head to look at Jiaran, only to see that he had stopped smiling, and his eyes were full of coldness and sharpness. The sky full of grievances and unwillingness swept over like waves. Luzon wanted to speak, but couldn't say a word. Jiaran seemed not to notice his pain. He lowered his head and poured himself a glass of wine and said, Brother Lu, you know that my sister is the treasure of our family and has never suffered any grievances. You are the same age as me and are more than 10 years older than her, although you are not a biological brother. In all these years, as long as there are good things, my sister has never fallen short of your share. Now, your marriage is all due to my sister, so you have to give her a generous gift to thank her. Luzon squeezed the wine glass in his hand tightly. His mouth was so bitter that he couldn't open it. He naturally knew that what he hoped for would be impossible to realize from the beginning. But people are so strange. They know everything clearly in their minds, but their hearts just keep running towards the dead end, and they can't hold them back. That elf-like girl seemed to be engraved in his soul with every smile. She is like a little Sunday. Wherever she goes, there is warmth and laughter. Every time he spent countless days and nights guarding the deserted and vast mansion, he couldn't help but imagine that if he could join hands with her, his life would be much more interesting. She can cook delicious meals, talk and laugh with him, and accompany him to see the beautiful scenery in the world. And he will also take care of her with all his heart and support her with a windless and rainless sky. But when the dust settled, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only accept his fate. With a hoarse voice, he responded word by word, Don't worry, princess, she will be my biological sister from now on, and I will definitely thank her properly. Jiaran raised his head to clink glasses with him, feeling a little unbearable in his heart. He whispered, When you live in this world, you can't do whatever you want. If a man cares about the world, why should he care about his children? Luzon did not respond. He raised his head and drank the wine in one gulp, choking until tears flowed down his eyes. After 7 or 8 days of preparations, the flower viewing party at the Earl's mansion finally began. At 3 o'clock in the morning, ladies from various families came to the door one after another with invitations. 2 updates today. End of this chapter. Dressed as a farm boy, he cheated on his way out of the desert. Author, Delayed Flowering. Chapter 970. Chapter 970, Women are not allowed to stay in college. The first few to come were Mrs. Lu, Mrs. Singh and Mrs. Jia. They are close friends with the Li family. Mrs. Li and Tao Hongying are not here, so they naturally have to come over to help entertain the guests. Wanner is the eldest son and daughter-in-law of the Earl's mansion. She has given birth to another son, and now her husband is on the gold medal list. This confidence ranks first among the women in Zindu and is envied by everyone. Today, she wore a floor-length silver silk satin dress and a pair of mutton-fat jade bracelets. She dressed up noble and dignified. She served tea and joked with everyone, very gracefully and calmly. Abe wore a bright red traditional dress from the Golden Buddha Kingdom, but she made a slight improvement and covered her exposed arms with gauze. It was not disrespectful and did not damage the overall beauty of the skirt. The ones responsible for the improvement are of course Wanner and Jiyan. This is also what Abe is most satisfied with about her husband's family. Even though her foreign daughter-in-law has some habits that are very different from Tianwu's, her husband's family never severely reprimands or forces her. They only ask for her opinion and then discuss a simple solution. Method. Just like now, even though she doesn't understand the language, her sister-in-law will patiently explain to her whatever everyone talks about. In fact, she still didn't understand most of it, but she laughed from the bottom of her heart. Everyone originally thought that Queen Abe would be proud, cold, and difficult to get along with, but they were unexpectedly surprised. When everyone spoke to her, she would respond with a smile. Children would run up to her out of curiosity, and she would tease them with a smile and coax them to play. When delicious snacks are served, she will eat a piece generously, with a look of love on her face. This makes everyone couldn't help but like her. Such a daughter-in-law, let alone a queen, is a child from an ordinary family. Marrying her into the family is also a blessing for the family. Jian is an unmarried girl. Of course, today's task is to entertain the little sisters from various families who come to visit her. The third princess came out of the palace early under the guise of helping. As a result, she and Bezu ate non-stop, happier than anyone else. In order to talk and laugh more freely, Jian specially built a temporary grass pavilion on the side of the peach blossom forest, surrounded by light-colored gauze, forming a separate small world. Girls get together, whisper a little, and play wildly, without fear of being seen and said to be unruly. The important prop of playing cards was once again put on the table. The third princess and Jian have been playing in the palace for so long and have become super masters. After a few rounds, she had Bezu and the other two girls covered in notes. No more playing, no more playing, the princess is so powerful, she is just chasing us to bully us. That's right, the princess has made a marriage, and it's a time of great fortune we definitely can't compare. The two girls have cheerful and lively temperaments. They have met the third princess several times on weekdays. Now they are having fun and are less restrained, so they start to act coquettishly and laugh. The third princess blushed when she heard this, threw the cards and said, "Okay, then I'll take a break and you guys can play another game. I'll be responsible for finding some good fruits for you with the good news." Okay, it would be better if the princess could pick some bananas and come back. I like to eat bananas the most, but unfortunately the ones sold in the princess's shop are too expensive. If you get the chance today, you must eat enough. A girl cheered in response, and then dragged a companion to join the battle. The third princess was in a very good mood and left without caring at all. She took the good news on her arm and left. The male guests were in the front yard, and the female guests were on the other side of the garden, which made the road very quiet and gave the little sisters a chance to whisper. Jian asked in a low voice, "You are too fast. I have only been in the palace for a few days, and you have already decided on the marriage." The princess smiled proudly and replied, "My father said that brother Lu has good character and knowledge, and his family also agreed, so it was decided." Jian smiled and poked her waist, jokingly saying, "Hey, don't blame it all on Uncle Huang. You must also like brother Lu, otherwise you wouldn't agree." The third princess was itching to hide and run away, holding up her skirt while Jian chased after her. As soon as they left the garden gate, the third princess ran into a hug. It turned out that Jian and his friends were bringing some classmates and friends over to enjoy the peach blossoms. It was Luzon who caught the third princess. The third princess was startled when she saw that it was her fiancé. Her face turned red again, and she shyly broke the good news and ran away. Jian laughed and waved vigorously to his brothers. Some students joked to Luzon, "The prince and the princess are destined to meet each other like this." The others also booed, and Luzon smiled stiffly. Fortunately, Jian came to the rescue and said, "Let's go, everyone, let's go enjoy the flowers. I asked someone to find a few jars of peach blossom wine. We'll write poems while drinking, and the winner will get the jackpot. Haha, brother Li is so generous, let's go, I won't come back until I'm drunk today." "Okay, the peach blossom wine is yours, and the winnings are for me. What brother Li brings out will definitely be good." Everyone entered the garden talking and laughing. Luzon turned his head and glanced. The two girls had run away hand in hand, and only the laughter like silver bells still lingered faintly in his ears. He covered up the incomprehensible look in his eyes, and put a warm smile on his face again. There is no destiny from the beginning, and forcing will only destroy the last bit of fate. That's good, that's good. The Lee family's banquets never lacked good wine and good food, and the guests who came and went were not sarcastic. So, it is a rare moment of relaxation and enjoyment for everyone to have a banquet at Lee's house. Not to mention the men drinking happily and the children having fun, even the women rarely take a break from their busy lives. As the sun set, the guests took their leave, with smiles on their faces, and invited the Lee family to come and sit at their home. Finally all the guests were gone, and the young and old of the Lee family were too tired to talk, so they put a hasty cushion on their stomachs, washed up and went to sleep. Ji-Yun was thinking about Bijeng's adoptive father and father. He didn't hear much news at home. After staying at home for 2 more days, he spoke to his sisters-in-law and then entered the palace. The third princess is following her grandma in sorting out her dowry and learning how to manage the family. After all, the princess's mansion is about to be built. After getting married, she and Luzon had to choose a house to live in. Even if they had a nanny and a maid to help them, she, the head of the house, couldn't understand everything. Suddenly hearing the good news that she had entered the palace, the third princess was so happy that she ran out with her skirt in hand. As soon as Ji-Yun entered the yard, she was hugged so much that her nose hurt. Before she could complain, the third princess started looking in front of and behind her again. Where is Santiago? Where did Santiago go? This heartless one, I feed it on weekdays. What a good thing. It went back with you and didn't even come to see me. Ji-Yun is helpless. The little fox has been playing with the children at home these days. There are endless snacks and fruits, and free grooming services. It has long been so happy that it has forgotten what night it is. When her master entered the palace, the cat refused to follow him. So, she could only say, let Shuiling go back and catch Santiago soon. Haha, that's pretty much it. The third princess was finally satisfied and walked inside with a smile on her arm. Ji-Yun asked, is there anything new in the palace these days? No, I've been bored all day, and I'm just waiting for you to come and save my life. The third princess looked around and said in a low voice, I'm looking forward to getting married early. At least I can play everywhere and don't have to be trapped here. Ji-Yun rolled her eyes, revealing her little thoughts. If you want to go and play with Brother Lu, just say so. How sad it will be if this word reaches Uncle Wang's ears. I have raised you with good clothes and good food, but you still don't appreciate it. The third princess chuckled, oh, I'm just telling you, you can't complain. After saying that, she suddenly remembered something and quickly changed her subject. Today's update is here. End of this chapter.